Hello everyone and welcome back. So this is now time of the day for our final panel session. And it's fantastic to have such a large group of many different perspectives on the theme of engagement with us this afternoon and what it's meant to them in relation to their IWM 1418 Legacy Fund project. So I'm delighted to introduce our chair for this session. He's the former curator and senior producer for Home in Manchester, now working as a freelance. Please welcome Bren O'Callaghan. Thank you.
Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to our last session of the day. I'm glad everyone's got a coffee in. As you can see, we are quite a full panel this afternoon. Just counted, we are just a few folk short of a recreation of the Last Supper. And Tony, you are at the head of the table, it looks like, in the centre there. As you heard, we're going to address the theme of engagement within the 1418 now Legacy Fund, drawing upon 4 key commissions and case studies. As you heard, my name is Bren O'Callaghan. I'm an independent curator and producer. I draw upon a background in curation, programming, production, and new commissions from artist film, live performance, exhibition, broadcast, public realm, and media. I'll be moderating our session, introducing our speakers, and facilitating questions, some from myself, but I really hope many from yourselves. A little bit more about me. I was formerly curator and senior producer at Home Art Centre and Corner House in Manchester, working to develop and present all new exhibitions and commissions. I was curator with Artichoke Trust, senior producer with Culture Liverpool, and curator and senior producer with BBC Public Space Broadcasting. In 2020, I founded the biannual Manchester Open exhibition, which that we know of is the largest open call art exhibition outside of London, open to everyone, regardless of age, experience, or background. It's now approaching its 4th edition in 2026. I suspect I was asked to moderate this afternoon's session because I place an unapologetic emphasis upon audience engagement across all forms of cultural production. Now, indulge me for a moment. I'm going to lean into an analogy. So the author and humorist Douglas Adams, in his book and radio play, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, wrote of a small alien life form called a Babel fish. Now, if you were to insert a Babel fish into your ear canal, you would be automatically able to understand anything said to you in any form of language, no matter how alien or unfamiliar. The Babel fish, and I must stress this is a fictional life form, is a model for my own practice. Now, by this, I mean that my goal as both a curator and producer is to interpret an artist's intentions to an audience, and in turn, to ensure there are routes of entry and response by which the audience can occupy common ground with the artist. I prefer, where possible, to initiate a 2-way dialogue and not a 1-way mirror. Now, we're going to hear from 4 groups today in the form of short 5-minute presentations, all of whom, via various methods and means of realization or response, have prioritized engagement strategies. In order of presentation, these will be Mandy McIntosh, artist, and Shawn Fernandez with Springburn Unity Network. Ethar Dirar, artist with Freedom Women Collective, and Dr. Lee Karen Stow, photographer and visual researcher. Jodie Bishop, public art officer, and Tony Davey, engagement officer with The Box. And Joe Caslin, artist, and Niall Kerr, head of heritage and community relations, Nerve Centre. So before I hand over to our panelists, I'd like our guests and our audience to consider the following provocations today. What are the benefits of co-creation, for example, between organizations, artists, community groups, and those with lived experience? Is co-creation a useful conceptual model in terms of art commissioning? What challenges or barriers might arise when working in this way? And what role does trust play in co-creation, which I know has already been referenced this morning? So these are the starters for consideration, but I'd welcome wider questions. So now each pair of speakers will introduce themselves, but I'd like to start by inviting Mandy and Shawn to speak first. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is like speed dating. We're the engagement people, so we have to be really quick. I'm really moved and humbled to be here, and especially after hearing about all the other projects today, because this is the first day that we've actually encountered them all. The background to our project is that Kathy Wilkes approached me probably about a year ago, a year before she started her commission, to ask me if I would, as she said, accompany her on her project. And instantly I knew that I wanted to work with Springburn Unity Network. I'm from Springburn, and Springburn Unity Network were already active in the area, but they didn't have space to work in. So one of the first things that we did was to get a lease. When we say we, I mean us, we worked together. We negotiated a lease, and we used the funding to pay for the rent and to pay for the electricity and all of that sort of thing. And then the other thing that we did was we repaired a monument, and the monument that we repaired was to celebrate the 21st birthday in 1902 of the Cowlayers cooperative movement. And so the Cowlayers Cooperative were the Springburn branch of the international cooperative movement, where workers collectively owned the means of production and distribution. And so they manufactured food, shoes, coal, medicine, school uniforms. When we can afford to live, we can afford to think and to imagine. And so we made the connection between the work of Springburn Unity Network and the Cowlayers Cooperative. So if we can play the film, please.
Today's a big day because we're revealing, or we're welcoming back, this beautiful monument to the community of Springburn. This is the Cowlayers Cooperative Monument. It's 122 years old. It's outlived the public halls, it's outlived two schemes, it's still standing, and it's a really, really important symbol for Springburn.
This monument mirrors the ethos of our charity, Springburn Unity Network, where we promote the importance of unity in every initiative we undertake. It stands as a testament to the enduring importance of cooperation, not just in history, but also in the present. Through our efforts, we aim to honor the past while inspiring the future. To live in harmony in a multicultural community is not just a privilege, it is a responsibility. We must focus not on what divides us, but on what unites us.
For each. So we all talked about this, about how this is like a philosophy. We're nothing without each other. If you help me, I'll help you. Yeah. When this shopping centre was opened in the 1980s, this monument was moved up to sit here. When the council put it back together, they didn't reinstate it or pin it back properly. It was simply, as he said, stuck together like chewing gum with mortar. And so whole pieces of the monument have come away, been kind of broken and kicked away. I discovered that bits of this monument were actually stored in an empty unit in a shopping trolley. Mala and Shawn, we discussed this. We would like to make the connection between the work that Springburn Unity Network do and the kind of history of the cooperative movement. 1, 2, 3. Come on, join us down in the
Okay, thank you, Mandy. Let me introduce myself. My name is Shawn Fernandez, a community development practitioner and also a founder of Springburn Unity Network, alongside my mother, who is also present today. We are a charity that helps people from all walks of life in tackling loneliness and social exclusion, and at the same time accentuates the importance of unity within communities. Art and community development have always been closely connected, creating spaces where individuals can unite, express themselves, and foster a shared sense of belonging. At Springburn Unity Network, we have witnessed how integrating art with community development has enhanced our capacity, elevated our charitable work, and reinforced our mission to emphasize unity within our communities. Embedding community development values and practices have been instrumental in our continued growth and success. Through the collaboration with artists Mandy, McIntosh, Kathy Wilkes, the Imperial War Museum from London, Hunterian Museum, University of Glasgow, we have not only created a space that supports local communities, but also revitalized a historical landmark, the Cowles Cooperative Monument at Springburn. The project has helped Springburn Unity Network in securing a vital space that fosters a holistic and trauma-informed environment where everyone feels safe and supported. Through the integration of arts as a form of expression, we break down language barriers, empowering individuals to connect, heal, and cultivate a strong sense of community through the power of unity. Springburn has a deep-rooted history of resilience and solidarity. So in recent years, our charity has extended its capacity, offering a structured space where people from diverse backgrounds can connect, learn, and grow together. The collaboration work between us was pivotal in solidifying our vision, in promoting and fostering unity through all our community engagement initiatives. And providing this has allowed to document our work, creating educational materials and engaging the community in meaningful ways. So one of the most significant milestones in our journey has been the restoration of the Cowles Cooperative Monument. The structure symbolizes the strength of collective action and mutual support. This important piece of work was led by artist Mandy McIntosh, and when we look at this monument, broken and neglected, we saw more than just a piece of history. We saw an opportunity to align our efforts with the legacy of unity that continues to shape Springburn today, as it's a very diverse community. Our role in this project was not simply to commemorate the past, but to forge a bridge between history and the present. So by repairing the monument, we reinforced the importance of cooperation and community solidarity. The restoration of this landmark was a shared achievement, requiring collaboration across sectors with support from heritage institutions like the Imperial War Museum, the Hunterian, and grassroots organizations alike. So, the Cowles Cooperative Monument of the late 1800s and our work today shared a common thread. Union is our strength. Each for all and all for each, like what it shows in the monument. The belief that no one should be left behind. So we are bound not by borders, but our shared pulse of humanity. So this initiative has strengthened our communities to resolve and foster inclusion, creating and our social responsibility. So as we move forward, let us carry the spirit of cooperation within us. The monument is no longer just a relic, it's a living testament to the power of collective action. Together we can continue to build a future where diversity is embraced, differences are celebrated, and unity remain our strongest foundation. Thanks. Thank you.
We have we've got some souvenir tea towels from our project. If anyone would like one, come and speak to us, we'll give you one.
And next we have Lee and Ethar.
We would like to start by thanking the Imperial War Museum for the opportunity to create Freedom Women Collective in partnership with the Freedom Festival Hall. The Legacy Fund Commission enabled us, women who survived war and resettled here as refugees, to research, create, and present our first exhibition called Tomorrow. We are Arafa from Sudan and Libya, at that side of the hall, and Nisreen from Syria, Gaida from Sudan and Libya, Shuki from Ethiopia, and Faiza from Somalia, plus sisters and daughters.
Our project is inspired by the women's personal photos taken before, during, and after war. These rich photo collections, rescued, preserved, and carried across borders in albums, on laptops, phones, and memory sticks, show who she was before becoming a refugee, how she coped with the trauma, loss, and indignity of forced displacement. What she sees as a woman with a camera goes largely unrecognized and ignored, hidden behind dominant war photography and mainstream visual representations and misrepresentations. Her photos show women impacted by war, not as passive bystanders, but as active witnesses and documentarians, as custodians of knowledge, identity, and memory.
We created visual and textile artworks, sculpture, and poetry to reflect each story and experience. As a collective, we met regularly with our partners at Freedom Festival, our producer Laura Beddoes, and with our curator Sarah Perks from MIMA at Teesside University.
We also worked one-to-one to edit these vast personal visual biographies. In resettlement, these collections remained relatively private and unseen.
We launched Tomorrow at Freedom Festival 2023 at Ferns Art Gallery in Hull. Tomorrow is about hope and self-determination, a way of looking to the future together.
At the heart of our exhibition is a 30-minute photo film told through the eyes of the artists.
Artwork, textile filled the space, as did a life-size artifact olive tree, hanging with family photos. We invited the public to Freedom Talk with Q&A and meet the artists on Saturdays. We continue to create and seek partners to collaborate with.
And we continue to call for more spaces and platforms to enable and support refugee women to resist invisibility through self-representation. Our new project, called Line Time, illuminates stories of women refugees and migrant factory workers using photography, artwork, and words.
And our future project, called Our Stories from the Sea, told from our northern output, our resettled home on the East Yorkshire coastline.
Thank you. This is the wider collective, and please, if you want to know more, come and talk to us. And we just want to very proudly ask two more of our collective to come and say hello. Ethar and Mayers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Tony and Jodie.
Hi there, so we're Jodie and Tony. We're based at The Box, which is in Plymouth. We're a museum, art gallery and archive. And our project was called Broken Token by the artist Paul Rooney. So The project really started with the Falklands conflict, actually. I was thinking about that. We'd recently had a bit of a refurbishment of one of our galleries to mark the 40th anniversary of the Falklands. And we'd had a new image display put in and made a film. But I guess at the time we were quite aware, a lot of the images showed the kind of celebration element of the forces coming home. The film spoke to a lot of sort of officer level interviewees, and we were quite conscious of the fact that it was really missing the voice of the veterans, their families, the people that served, the people that lived and worked in the city while conflict was going on. So it kind of got us thinking, and we reached out to a few of the sort of veteran support groups in the city, and conversations quickly evolved to start thinking about the reality behind these photos, what was actually going on, what was people's relationship with home, how did they really feel when they came home, and how did their families feel. When the Imperial War Museum 1418 Now Legacy Fund came along, we were really excited. It was an opportunity for us to kind of explore these voices and kind of address those issues in the gallery and what we were doing. And also during that time, the conversation has evolved and it had become much more than the Falklands, and looking at the military heritage of the city and the dockyard and all of those things to become much bigger than just the Falklands. So it was really thinking about the whole city and everyone that lived there. So we knew really early on that the veterans, we wanted them to have a really strong voice in this project. We were going to work with them to write a brief. We were going to work with them to select the artists. But we also knew the exhibition, or whatever the work was going to be shown in one of our really prominent gallery spaces, and it was a really important part of our program, our exhibition program. So we set upon a journey to try and bring everyone together and look at how we got there.
Okay, so we set about recruiting a number of veterans and their family members with a sort of open call, but by going through veteran support organisations. And that way we had people that were both veterans from the Falklands and were in their 80s, through to people who were in supported housing at this time with a number of issues that were going on for them. But we were working in partnership with those organisations to work with the veterans rather than just doing an open call. We had an initial kind of group come together of around about 9 veterans, and after a few sessions, that kind of whittled down to a core group of 5, which we were a bit disappointed with, to be honest. We thought 5 veterans, that's not very many, but we've been reliably told that was a good number. So they were very committed, and what we did is we worked with them over several months to engage them with the box, with the collections, with the exhibitions that were happening, with the contemporary art exhibitions that were happening in the box, so that they were in a position where they felt comfortable and confident to help us then write the brief for this particular commission. That took a lot of work, it took a lot of trust, and more importantly, it took a lot of time. Once they wrote the brief, they were then involved with the selection process, and we worked with the Imperial War Museum and ourselves and the veterans to shortlist the artists from an open call and also do the final interviews, and they were all involved on the interview panel. And I'm sure if we have more time, and we may talk a little bit more about that in the questions, that was a really interesting process. They decided on an artist called Paul Rooney, a fantastic contemporary sound and film artist. The original project was that they would get us to a point where they selected the artist, and it was always open that if they wanted to continue with the artists themselves, they could, but it was never part of the original deal. But all of them wanted to continue, and that was really, really interesting that they wanted to work directly with the artist. I'm conscious we haven't got much time, so I'm just going to show you a very quick clip of Broken Token.
My name's Paul Rooney. I've made a piece that's shown at the box called Broken Token, which is a sound piece with a 2-screen film projection that focuses on a folk song that was inspired by an actual song that was found in the Box archive.
I'm Paul Cunningham, known as Yorks or Yorkie. I got involved in this project via HMS Ardent. It's been enlightening in a number of ways. Right from the off, I was inquisitive and wanting to see what each of the candidates put forward. And initially I thought, is it going to be just a boring oil painting, or is it going to be so much more? And obviously the end result, having just seen it all the way through for the first time today, it did actually give me quite a wave of emotion.
Chris Attis. I was one of the people, a veteran, that helped the selection process to hire Paul for this art piece.
A phone call that something's happened. He's okay now. He's been out of the army for years.
I wanted to be part of it from the beginning. It sounded interesting. It sounded like a way that we could put our views and our opinions across. When we sat down and watched it first time, it was quite emotional. I'm not really an emotional person, but it sort of hit home a little bit.
All the thoughts go through your head.
I'm quite proud, I think I am. Yeah, I'm proud that we've been part of it, but also that we've been accepted as part of it, and we've made some friends as well. Yeah, proud, I think, is the overwhelming sort of feeling.
And that they took notice of what we'd said.
Yes, and they took notice of
what we'd
our input.
contributed to it.
When the war is over, when the war is over in every ravaged land.
Thank you, and over to Niall and Joe.
Is it working? Hello? We decided we're going to sit here.
Okay, so hopefully this works okay. So hello everyone, my name is Niall Kerr. I'm the Head of Heritage with the Nerve Centre, an arts organisation based in Derry and Belfast. And this is Joe Caslin.
Hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
Here are you, Joe.
I'm a street artist, an academic, and an activist, are my kind of three calling cards.
Yep. So we're going to talk to you today about a project called We Can Do Better, which started in 2023 and culminated last year. Nerve Centre have been proud to work with 1418 now on previous commissions, and also with Joe on some previous work, and have that relationship. So when the Legacy Fund came along, we thought it was a really great opportunity to advance some of that work and take it further. So Joe will talk us through some of the start of the project.
Like all good stories, it began with 6 women. Well, technically it ended up with 6 women after a few workshops distilled down the core group. It had been 26 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, a document that has brought the foundations of peace to Northern Ireland. We had the ambition to create a piece of art co-created with young people born post-Good Friday Agreement around the legacy of conflict. Our only constants were a large-scale, hopefully outdoors, large artwork that would use immersive tech to delve into the work and to build accessibility. So these are the group of women. It was a 9-month project. And we sat and talked for the first 6 months. This might sound strange, but let me build some context. Young people seldomly have a voice in Northern Ireland, but young women only fall from the tongues of establishment through stories of promiscuity or horrific violence, not just regular violence. I learned to recognize my privilege in this workshop session, and I also learned to shut up. I would echo much of what Cian has spoken about earlier around trust and conflict. These young women needed to trust me with their stories and their lived experience, and this took time. Trust takes time. So those 6 months helped determine the direction of the project and the issues these young women wanted to speak on. So they wanted to speak about their lived experience of Northern Ireland. They wanted to speak on mental health and suicide. They wanted to speak on gender-based violence and their collective hopes and dreams. Colour holds enormous significance in Northern Ireland, so choosing a suite of colours took more time than I had ever imagined. And these are the colours that we had selected.
So as the project progressed, we had to find a location, the right location, to display Joe's work. So we tasked the group, the collective, to go out and to scout potential sites around Northern Ireland that they felt had a resonance. They identified Downhill House, which you can see on the screen here, which is a National Trust property on the north coast, and it's a really stunning but really bleak location. And the history of the house itself is interesting, and it sort of played into the project. The owner, the eccentric owner, was the Earl Bishop, and he was a man ahead of his time. He was cross-community before the term existed. He allowed different denominations to practice their religion on his grounds. He was also a really prolific art collector, buying paintings, sculpture works from across the world, including work by Rembrandt, Raphael, and Caravaggio. So we saw it very much as playing back into that art sense as well. But we saw the power of the site to tell a new story through new art. And thankfully, the team at the National Trust did too, trusting us eventually to take over the site.
So once we secured the site, the next thing that we had to do is we had to build a charter and an idea around what we were going to do with the site. So our charter began with 2 sentences: see us as equals, see these young women as equals, and now hear our voice. And you can only hear their voice when you see them as equals. Alongside our existing aims for large-scale artwork and deploying technology, the group wanted to explore how to use the whole site to amplify their voices. We began to look at protest as a form of storytelling, a powerful medium to get their views across. Together we devised an opening weekend of events that would showcase their unique talents to extensive audiences. So we'll talk to you a little bit about that planning and how that came about. So this is the group of young women. They decided to call themselves the Kindred Collective. They were each drawn and represented as birds from the native area. You might ask, why birds? Why not them? It's important that they had agency and a sense of ownership over the project, while not being put in a situation where they would come under attack from those who didn't agree with the project. And safeguarding was a really important part of this project. Lots of time when people speak up, especially young women when they speak up, the vitriol that comes online is horrific. So the next thing we created was the large-scale artwork. So this was the final artwork. It represented a young woman. The head is tilted upwards as though facing the future, sparking thoughts of possibility, hope, and aspiration. The figure's hands are outstretched. They are caregiving, open, gentle, and supportive. The downward-facing triangle is an ancient symbol of femininity, recognized worldwide. It is seen as life-giving, nurturing, and strong. The doorway, you can't see it in this image that's here, but you'll see it in the next. The voice of the young women involved was intrinsic to this project. You enter the runes through the voice box in the drawing, and this refers back once again to our charter, see us as equals, now hear our voice. And this is the artwork.
Take my story, take it in your
So the artwork remained in place for 4 weeks before it began to wash away with the elements. And the music you just heard was written, produced and recorded by one of the participants, one of the kindred, and also featured strongly in our augmented reality app.
So I'll talk to you a little bit about the augmented reality experience that accompanied the artwork. There we go. So we were lucky to leverage some additional funding from the Arts Council in Northern Ireland to fully realise this as a fully kind of immersive experience. And it leveraged the latest AR tech to do that. So we developed an immersive app that accompanied visitors through each step of the journey that Joe spoke about previously. You'll see examples of how the assets looked on the screen here. At the front of the house, an animation overlaid the real world and at the house and the environment, which detailed the artwork and its purpose. It also started to introduce the themes of the project, including the protest placards which the group had created and which were installed inside of the house. At the end of this animated introduction, the orb, so the visual guide to the artwork, it disappeared in through the front door and through the voice box, inviting you to come inside. And when then inside the house, you had the chance to scan trigger points, to listen to messages of hope that were recorded by each of the Kindred Collective about their aspirations for the future of Northern Ireland. And then finally, when you felt inspired by those messages, visitors then had the chance to use the app to record their own messages, to create an evolving, ever-growing virtual bank of stories that the general public could listen to.
Protest was a really important mechanism for the Kindred Collective to have their voices heard across their 4 chosen themes. If you look at the sample of, it's hard to read them, that's there, so I'll read them out. So the first one says Northern Ireland is one of the most dangerous places in Europe for women. That is a fact. Anytime that we decided to write fact, it was written quite regularly without sans serif. And a very normal form of text. The other one is handwritten. So anytime it's the girls' voices, it's that handwritten text. This has changed in the last, it's been 8 months since we've done the project. Northern Ireland is now the most dangerous place in Europe. Words matter. Women are only mentioned twice in the Good Friday Agreement, with no reference to their lived experience of conflict or the huge emotional burden placed on them for generations. The next one, we will die of old age. You will die of old age, we will die of climate change. Northern Ireland's suicides outnumbered the Trouble's death toll, with over 4,500 people have taken their own lives since the conflict ended. So as Keane had spoken about earlier on, this is almost one life lost every 2 days since the end of the Troubles. This image shows how they were displayed in the ruins of Downhill, and on the right you can see an example. I've just talked you through them. All facts were backed up by academic rigor, because oftentimes women's voices are diminished and kind of cast aside. So we had that scan where you could be brought back to that actual academic paper. Safe to say this is the part of the project which the partners were the most apprehensive about. The context of protest in Northern Ireland can have different meaning, but perhaps unsurprisingly was the element that garnered the most public interaction.
And finally, I appreciate as it's going slightly over time, just to close off the presentation, we had a closing weekend, or an opening weekend, and this was the closing event in Mussington Temple on the cliff edge for an evening performance of Horizon Song, where one of the group performed. And I think it was a fitting tribute to the power of what really purposeful engagement became through this project.
Thank you, everyone. You've done a great job in encapsulating what I know in many cases are months, if not years of work into some very kind of short, micro-flavor presentations. So thank you, everybody. My hope is to ask a question of each of our groups before throwing open to the audience. So please do start thinking of any questions of your own. We're actually okay for time. We're going to be okay. So hopefully we'll get a conversation in. My first question is for Ethar and Lee, actually. And so we've got mics here, we'll just pass them down. And for large-scale public art commissions with a social engagement angle, it can often be the case that a form of blind date is proposed between the artist and the nominated community. And as we know, it can take a long time to establish a rapport and establish working practices together. But it's not always the case. And I know from talking to you earlier that it wasn't the case for you. So can you tell me when this project actually first began prior to the moment at which the funding was confirmed?
Thank you. Can I? Yeah. Our project actually began 12 years ago. I began working with Shuke when she arrived with Biftu, her daughter, from Ethiopia. And then we've been working, Ethar and Arafah and Mayas, who are from Sudan and also escaped conflict in Libya. We've been working together for 10 years. So when you asked us to put a 5-minute presentation together, how do you put together 12 years of working together with our arts, with our photographs? My background is a documentary photographer working with women survivors of war worldwide. And all of a sudden, war was right back again in Hull, my home city, in the form of the modern wars happening. So war came to my street, my corner, through the experiences and stories of these women. So 12 years ago, I reached out to Shuke because I wanted to understand what was happening. And it began, we created some artworks, we shared photographs, we've had exhibitions. We Googled last night and we were actually shocked with just how much we've got on Google. And yes, it was impossible to put that into 5 minutes. And also, how do you put into 5 minutes working with women whose wars are very much ongoing? They're from Sudan, very much grossly underreported war. How do you put through how we work through the pandemic together? And many artists are frightened. There's lots. The building up of trust, it just evolved and took time on all of our sides. And many artists are worried about crossing boundaries, crossing borders. Yes, you have to be mindful of that. You have to be respectful, and there's agency all involved in an ongoing form of ethics. Consent isn't one thing, it's ongoing. But for me, I was meeting women who'd been courageous enough to cross borders and boundaries in the most horrendous conditions with children. So I had to find the courage to cross over the boundaries and borders into their world that was in my city in Hull, and which was their city. So there's trust on both sides and courage on both sides. And
I just wanted to add a tiny bit to that, and I think it was mentioned earlier this afternoon, where the word trust. I think that's a key element in working in partnership and building relations. You get more. It's like you invest more and you get more out of what you put in. The time that was invested, even from our side as the artist working with Lee and working with the wider collective, we were surprised of how much we were able to achieve and how much we were able to give, because we felt it was a relationship, it was a there was trust. So it was not like a one-off collaboration on something. It was ongoing, and even beyond. It's beyond tomorrow. It was before tomorrow and beyond tomorrow, if I have to put it simply. Yeah.
It wasn't a parachute. This is a commitment for life, and they're stuck with me and I'm stuck with them. So we just have to make more art and talk to people like you. So
the blind date led to all of a story, I guess. Yeah.
I love what you say, Ethar, about beyond tomorrow. So it was an incredible opportunity for the collective, of course, to receive a main gallery presentation, which many emerging artists can wait a lifetime for. But I'm sure you were also thinking about what's next. How can we continue momentum? how can we continue to open up pathways beyond this moment? Was that something that you had in mind? Was it something that you were discussing as you were making work for this particular commission?
Yeah, go.
Yes, I mean, what you saw, and also the amazing legacy commission that we got, is just a tip of the iceberg. So we have 12 years of archive, documentary, poetry, artwork, words, that we are trying to find an institution that we will take not only the women's own archives, those visual biographies from war, which should be in archives now. Their photographs should be on the walls, should be in archives. We should be in here as well. Sorry, I'm just. But also, we have created this very, very unique archive of our friendship, our relationship, through art and through working on projects like this. But I think I've lost the question now. Sorry.
You say the tip of the iceberg, and you're looking to
Tip of the iceberg, yes. We're in a very difficult climate because of funding and we all have other jobs as well to keep going. So.
And Mandy and Shawn, you also are very entrenched with the community with which you work. But your experience of commission was slightly different in that you weren't working with Kathy Wilkes, the artist who presented at the Hunterian, on co-creation, but you were working in conversation on a parallel delivery stream. I wonder if you can tell me more about how that arose.
So this notion of long-termism is really important. I mean, I think it's really vital, and it's something to really talk about here while people are all in the room. This idea that projects start at a certain time and stop at a certain time, they absolutely don't, and particularly in our sector. People who work with community are just constantly there. So I had been working in Springburn for maybe, I'm from there, and I was back there working on a community project, and I'd been there about 3 years before this happened, and subsequently Kathy Wilkes moved her studio to Springburn. I didn't know Kathy, but Kathy got in touch with me. What was I going to say? What was the question? Oh my God, it's so weird.
Just talking about how you're kind of working in parallel with Kathy's own
working
delivery.
in parallel. So Kathy it was really free. Kathy wanted to work with me and work with us because she knew that we would just get on with it, you know, and just do whatever we were going to do. And the thing about working with Shawn and Mala, and that this was something that came out about half a year after we started working together. When they first came to live in Springburn, Springburn is an absolute mess. You know, you talk about like violence, drug deaths, all of that. That's all going on there. So in 2001, very many refugees and asylum seekers were dispersed to Glasgow and to Springburn. And when Shawn and Mala came to Springburn, their first neighbour was a guy called Danny Kennedy, who turned out to be my dad's best friend, like back in the day, back in the 60s, and that was a completely unexpected thing. So we had a kind of bond through that, but we also had a bond just through wanting to make a change in this really abject place where not much is happening and there's not that much support and no funding. Shawn, you want to say something?
Yeah, and basically, like when we firstly arrived to Springburn back in 2017, what we observed, because we were doing our community development course, and then we were doing our placement in the area, and then we identified that one of the main things lacking in that area is the unity. There's no unity within the community. So we had a discussion, and Mandy was there as well. You know, we had a discussion, and we were thinking like identifying ways, you know, like unique ways how to bring people together, because that's the most difficult thing to do, bringing people from diverse backgrounds together. Language is a barrier. So how can we address and tackle that kind of issues? So what we did is, we come up with a lot of collective ideas and stuff.
When you have national partners involved in the distribution of funds, were there any requests made of how you should spend the funds that were diverted to you? Were there any requests or expectations as to possible outcomes, or perhaps what you couldn't do as well as what you could do?
We had a problem with the monument because the Imperial War Museum were a bit scared, and they didn't, and I'm going to say it because it's what happened. Imperial War Museum didn't want us to kind of they were, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, they were apprehensive about what it meant to take on a monument, a neglected monument that no one wanted to take care of. You know, there's this thing of what's going to happen to it afterwards. Fair enough, you're going to fix it, but then what's going to happen if it gets broken again? So it's this thing about civic responsibility. And this happens a lot in community projects. Lots of community projects don't get the chance to engage in the civic realm in that way because they don't have the institutional backup to do it. And so that was what was great about here. Like, we had the Imperial War Museum at our back and the Hunterian, and so we could advocate and move forward. So in a way, the Imperial War Museum stood back at a safe distance and let us do all the negotiation and take the risks. I think, is that accurate?
Everyone's still smiling. Tony and Jodie, so with your project, you brought on the veterans to help conceive, co-create the brief, as well as selecting the artist. So they perhaps didn't roll up their sleeves in the making of the work in the same way some projects do, some projects don't, just different strokes. And we saw the response of those veterans at the end and how moved they were. So I think it's safe to say they were pleased with the result. But I wonder at the outset, at the start, what their expectations were. Did they have any hopes, any requests?
The really interesting bit with it was how they were bringing all their own experience, knowledge, and the way they interpreted what they were seeing to all of the conversations that we had. So there were a raft of different expectations amongst the group, which is why it took so much time to get them to a point where we were pleasantly surprised how they agreed on the shortlist and then the final artist that was selected. We joked with Iris about arm wrestling with them to decide who was going to get what. But
and that we had, I think, the selection as well, because we had a really, really fantastic response to the commission brief, but it was really broad, the applications. We had the murals, we had those kind of sculptures, we had all sorts, didn't we? And veterans themselves, artists that had applied. So we had some really amazing artists in there as well, but I guess it was a little bit of nervousness still about what was actually going to come through that selection process. So, and obviously the ambitions for the project and what we were going to show and the partnership and all of that lot. So it was actually amazing, wasn't it? That final selection process, what the unanimous amongst all the partners and the people in that room about what those final 4 artists would be, and there were no murals. So yeah.
Murals have a place. Murals have a place. But
I'll show you the type. Yeah, we're looking at it.
I think for us, working with them from that first day where they came in, they didn't know what to expect, and we didn't know what to expect from the group, to a point where they were unanimous about their decision about which artist they wanted to appoint, and their enthusiasm to continue to work with that artist in the production of the actual piece gave us a real sense of achievement, that this was important for those people that were involved. Those veterans got something from it, and that was our starting point, really, that's where we wanted them to be.
So another question that arises for me from that is, and I think for everybody, and Joe in fact mentioned safeguarding earlier, which I was really, really pleased to hear you say that as a producer, and there are other producers on this panel too. It's often the case that isn't thought through adequately. And so I'm wondering, what was your experience, or maybe anyone else on the panel, because of course within the crucible, especially the 1418 Now Legacy Fund commissions, we are asking people to draw upon and perhaps contribute knowledge, reminiscence of lived experience of conflict and trauma. And so what do you, or others perhaps, put in place to ensure that wellness and safety is centered both before, during, and afterwards as well? So I wonder if anyone would like to comment, but perhaps Jodie and Tony as well.
I think I said at the beginning that we did this in partnership with veterans organisations. So it wasn't just an open call to say, are you a veteran, do you want to come and work with the box? It was, if we work with these organisations, they are there to support the veterans and work alongside us, so it wasn't just us on our own. And I think that was a really important thing for us to do, because, you know, no matter what our personal experience and knowledge and backgrounds are, we're not in a position to support every member of the community who comes through with the issues that may come up for them. So we need to have that in place throughout. We also were very keen to make sure that the original project was about working with the veterans to get them to a point where they selected the artist, and then it was the next stage was them working with them. So we were, in terms of safeguarding, it was we never asked any veteran to reveal any part of their own journeys or their own life stories.
And some of them did a little bit, didn't they? And some of them were quite open and wanting to talk, but others were very closed. That wasn't necessary at that point, was it? It was just, yeah.
And Ethar, you have direct experience yourself, of course. So what would you request or wish for, or what would you advise others to have available, do you think, by way of ensuring a safe, respectful space?
It is mainly making sure there's clear communication. With our group, I think there were about 5 languages between all the women and the sisters and the daughters. And again, it's about building that relationship, being able to communicate and checking along the way. So you might get someone who's really excited, they want to start this project, but then sometimes, I mean, from my experience, from our group experience, you also go back and reflect on, because sometimes it's a new country, it's a new life, and you don't really stop to reflect on your own experience. And I think with Tomorrow and with previous projects that we worked on, it allows us to reflect on our own experience in a way. And it was very important that there were a lot of checks, a lot of pauses, and sometimes just giving the space for processing. So I think that's a very important aspect, just being able to check, to pause, and not, because sometimes with projects you kind of run on a schedule and you want things done by deadlines, but there need to be a room of flexibility and consideration for that part, yeah. Because you might bring emotions that even the participant is not aware of, yeah.
Mandy and Shawn, do you have any thoughts on that?
From our perspective, having a safe space for people from diverse backgrounds. We also support refugees and asylum seekers as well who comes in, also local people who struggle with loneliness. So having a safe space and a safe environment for them to have positive conversations, I think it's vital. I think the fun has helped us, the project has helped us basically in securing that space and, kickstarting that journey. And and now we are thriving. We are a thriving charity, and in a short period of time as well. So there's a lot of impact that has been made in the local community in promoting unity, and people are very comfortable, and there are more people coming in now to the space, and they feel very welcomed and peaceful, basically. And also we are now in collaboration with the UK Home Office as well. So there's an approach now where they are coming in and having surgeries on a monthly basis, where they are helping refugees who have complex immigration issues. So it's a good partnership. It's a win-win situation where people are getting the advice and guidance that they need in a very positive and safe environment.
Lee, I think you wanted to speak.
Yes, I just want to quickly add the safeguarding and the duty and care shouldn't stop when the project ends and we present it, the exhibition's finished. I mean, just by coming here today, we met again to talk about our duty of care for today, because for Ethar, Arafat and Mayas, this is their first time at the Imperial War Museum. What triggers could there be? So we've even got a safe space organised in a safe cafe. We've not needed that today. Probably because we've been in here all the time, but we even had to think about that coming today. So it's got to be continuous. And because of the internet, our 30-minute photo film isn't freely available. If you want to see, we have a 6-minute film available, which is on the website. But if you want to see our 30-minute film, it's a password, and you have to actually ask us and get our consent. So.
Okay, thank you. Niall and Joe, I haven't forgotten you. I'm working my way down our row. I mentioned earlier, what are the benefits of co-creation, but I suspect you already have feelings about that because you have been consistently co-creating. This isn't your first rodeo. So why continue to co-create? What is it that pulls you forward?
You never... Hello? Go this one. Try this one, yeah. With co-creation, you never know what's coming. It's a funny one because it like we've all said, like the word of today is trust. You need to build that. With this project specifically, it was, building that trust and that dialogue with those young people, and then allowing them to open up to you. And when they opened up to us, we found out the most magical things that came from these young women, and that enhanced every element that was there in the project. Like if I went in with a very targeted approach and saying, no, this is what I want, this and this, we wouldn't got the suite of experiences that we got from there. It's to kind of have that capacity to not be caught up with deadlines and, the idea that, oh, this must be done now, to give yourself that freedom and that space to allow, like a relationship. It's like, you can't put a time on, I'm going to meet someone then get married. That's madness. You wouldn't do that in any other relationship. So why would you do that in your art space or your practice? Does that even make sense?
It does, yeah, of course. And Niall, at Nerve Centre, you work across dozens of projects, of course, which are many, high percentage, I imagine, are co-created.
Yeah, I think just reiterating what Joe's just said, you get a value from co-production that you don't get otherwise. I mean, we have worked with Joe before, actually always in a co-production capacity, but we could commission Joe to do a piece by himself and the work would be great. But what happened with this project was the layers of engagement and interaction for the participants, but then that came through into the audiences as well, because the audiences that were coming to it through the app, through the events program, through walking tours, were getting a sense of the project through the eyes of these participants that just wouldn't have existed otherwise. There's layers of value all built in all the way through. But and again, everyone knows this. It takes so much time, and I'm happy to say, or happy to hear that you thought 5 wasn't a big number. We thought 6 wasn't a big number. We only ended up with 6, but when you're working with a group over such a prolonged period of time, anything bigger than that, it starts to get diluted, I think. So having that smaller group and just building it, letting it see where it goes, and not understanding where it's going to go sometimes, because that's okay. It's okay to kind of build it as you go, because again, there's value in that.
And earlier you said that initially that you just talked for months and months and months. But there does come a point at which decisions need to be made to drive a project forward. And I'd be really interested to hear, using this case study, if you could illuminate how those decisions are made. That decision-making process. Is it a vote situation?
It was a lot of kind of just more dialogue. So let's say with the protest panels, all the women went through a Google Doc and just uploaded whatever statements, absolutely whatever they wanted to talk about, as long as it fit within those 4, kind of sections. So, kind of suicide and mental health, their hopes and their dreams, gender-based violence, and their lived experience of Northern Ireland. As long as it fitted within those, there was maybe 300 statements, and then we just sat in a room for 2 hours and went through it. And I sat back and they were like, well, that said the same thing twice, so we don't need to do it twice, out the door with that one. We're not saying that. And we had built our charter, so, kind of see us as equals, now hear our voice. There was always that reference back to that. So if you build good bones and good boundaries, kind of the choices will be made. So it wasn't like myself and Niall were going, oh no, you can't have that, you can't have that. And there was a bit of tension, coming back, and it was great for the Imperial War Museum because they said, you need to go and find academic references from that. And I was like, oh no, holy Lord. But we did it. then we could say, because we knew we wanted to change the type and how it was like a fact and an opinion. So because we had that, it lifted it higher. So it was like even, that was a co-curated element that was into it as well. So, it was...
Yeah, I think that external partnership thing is important, and also the National Trust, we're a partner. So we quite a few people, quite a few organisations who had a stake in this. And while not wanting to dilute what the women were saying, we had to be mindful that everyone could stand over and be comfortable that everything we were doing fitted objectively with their organisations as well.
We had 13 interactions that we wanted to do at the site, and the young women presented those to the National Trust. And I can tell you that the two women that sat across that they were presenting to, their faces were like, oh no, this, no. But they did it in such a respectful way. They said, I know my face is making this face, but like, I'm listening to you. They were very aware that they didn't want to shut down that creativity that was in young minds. But they absolutely said, no, we like, logistically, we can't do that. That's not. And they had to learn that, it was like, there's an intelligence that's in that. You can't just go out and put up whatever you please. If you're working with partners, everyone has a kind of a democratic vote that sits into it.
See, now this leads into my next question, and you're going to have to think of a different answer, okay. Which is, I've always found for myself that I've learned the most when things go wrong. You don't learn from what goes right. So falling forward or failing forward, I think is a term that some people use. And I wonder if each of group could suggest a moment when something wasn't working, something just wasn't working out, but that you found a way forward through that.
We've got two different ones.
Go for it, yeah.
Yeah, just about the co-creation. Yes, ours was very much collaborative co-creation. But especially when you're dealing with photographs and such huge archives as well, there has to be an editor at some point. We did have tension with Nisreen's collection, because she is a consummate photographer and her archive is thousands. She fled Syria. She's documented every minute of the day. She wanted all of the pictures in. So it's just that tension, and that the editing process was quite long, and then one would sneak in and we'd edit it down, then another one sneak in. And her photo film is a bit longer than everyone else's, but I think we just said, let's put the images in. So yeah, that's that kind of a tension. Yeah, at some point someone has to say, well, no, that's not working because it's too long or there's too many. So I found that hard, actually, because each one should have its own exhibition, each collection. But
then in terms of perhaps something that didn't go as you planned, but you found a way around it?
Yes, I think time management was a challenge, because each lady have her own time. They're on their own different times. So, but I think it's again to that flexibility factor. One of the things that we did to kind of manage that is having longer sessions. So there was about an hour buffer for any session we had, any group session we had together. But again, this is one of the things, it keep going back to building rapport. What it did not stop conflict or disagreement from happening, but what it did, it gave us the tools to be able to manage it. So again, that's another tool you gain by building that rapport with your partners, with the artists you work with. And I think that was really useful. Just made things go a bit smoother, yeah.
And I just add about trust. There has to be trust in the process as well. Sometimes in projects, nothing happens. Nobody wants to do anything. Everyone wants to go shopping or is bored, and that includes all of us. But then somehow, because you keep communicating and keep the energy going, then magic happens again, and then you're all sparked. So it's not like that. It is like that, isn't it? Yeah, to achieve
Mandy and Shawn, can you think of a moment from this particular commission where you were faced with an obstacle?
Yeah, I've already said mine. The monument when we thought that we weren't going to get to proceed with the monument, and I mean, that wasn't just about the Imperial War Museum being nervous. It was also about sort of statutory stuff around Glasgow City Council and permissions and land management and stuff. And so there was a point we'd set our heart on working on that, and there was a point where actually we thought we might not be able to, but we just didn't want to give up, you know. And we just found a way around. We basically just spoke to everybody that we knew and tried to just basically learn about how spaces in the city are managed, and it's an absolute minefield, but we just kind of kept going and got there in the end. And I think something else to kind of talk about as well is like aesthetics, right? When you're an artist and you're working with community, like one of the kind of workarounds is trying to kind of figure out aesthetically what things look like and what everyone is happy with, because we work together on like banners and collage and stuff like that, and there's a point where me as an artist, I've sort of abdicated aesthetic desire a long time ago. It doesn't matter to me what things look like, it's what they mean. Yeah.
And Tony and Jodie, was it all plain sailing or?
All plain sailing, completely. Yeah, I'm struggling to think of. Yeah, I genuinely am.
That's nice to hear. Yeah.
I think the one of the things was because this wasn't an established group that were together. They were from various different parts of the city, didn't know each other. Trying to get them together in the room at the same time often became difficult because it would take weeks just to organise a time where they could all get together. Because, oh no, I've got swimming on a Wednesday afternoon, or I've got, I'm doing shopping Friday morning, or I'm seeing my gran, whatever it may be, that always happened. So it's just realising that's the nature of working with a group of people, that they're going to have their other lives. That we're not their priority, funnily enough.
And why time is so important, and you can't rush these things.
Yeah.
And Niall and Joe, I feel like I'm asking you to pick at a scab that doesn't exist with your project.
No, there's two things that come to mind, actually. Just two, I know. We spoke about it earlier, just over a break. Planning permission. Planning permission was fun. So not to point any fingers, and it wasn't you or me. Someone somewhere forgot to press submit on a planning application before a certain date, and we didn't have planning permission until the day that we started putting the piece up. So we boarded up the windows on the first day because it was too wet to put the piece onto the wall anyway, and we're driving away when we got the call. So yeah, it was really right down to the wire. And secondly, we did a big piece of engagement with the local community in advance around telling them that this thing was coming. And there's a real sense in the local community that Downhill House, Mussenden Temple belongs to the people. And the local community really, really hold a lot of power there. So we held information sessions. We did a very significant comms campaign in advance to introduce this, to talk about what this thing was, that it was temporary. We used the word temporary a lot. We used the word paper-based a lot, but that still didn't stop social media lighting up. So the online engagement with the project set new records internally for us as an organisation, for Joe as an artist. It blew up. It became a really big thing in a positive way. The engagement, the interaction, the impressions, it was huge. It was really, really significant. With that comes negativity, in that people were like, oh my God, I can't believe you've painted this house, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, even the best laid plans of explaining things sometimes don't always go how you want them to.
Absolutely, but we never forget, do we? We always find a way to carry that through to the next project. But I'd like to pass over to the audience now. I'm really, really hoping that some hands are going to go up. We've got roaming mics. Does anybody have a question for anybody in the panel, either collectively or for an individual project? Oh, I have a question over here. And then I think we had one over here as well then. So.
Is that on? Yeah. Thanks, everyone. It's amazing, inspiring work. I've got an observation and a question. So the observation comes from working on Kathy Wilkes's commission and the privilege of working with Mandy and Son alongside that. And it struck me that Kathy really initiated passing over the artist-led commission, the freedom of that, to a co-created or a community-based project. And that seemed quite common actually to everyone's work in a really positive way. It didn't start with fixed outcomes or predicted success. That license has, through 1480 Now's model, I think, been passed over. So I wondered if people might want to just reflect on that. But also, I was thinking about something Michael said earlier that was really kind of upsetting and has haunted the event a bit since for me, which was around the violence by which people who have already had to suffer exposure to war and conflict are deprived of things like the ability to host, or the way the grain of everyday life might still be affected, not only by those experiences, but by policies, by practices, by institutional contexts. And so, not wanting to put a downer on a very positive feeling panel, I wondered how people might reflect on trying to operate between the affordances of a generous commission and the social contexts that are constructing limits and putting violence back into people's lives through, just to say it bluntly, through the British state.
Would anyone on the panel like to respond? Any thoughts? I know it was largely observation as well. There's a lot to process and digest there too. Lee, do you have any thoughts? Are you looking at me?
Late in the day and we were so nervous about today and we were all tired. But do you mean re-triggering trauma with working with the artists?
Not only in a safeguarding way, but just, I mean, the complexity of trying to make work in the spirit you're talking about while the environment around you is not the environment of a generous commissioning. You know, the state is doing these other things.
I'll have attempt at that. For me, I'm from Sudan, and there is a current ongoing war. And it's something that we live every day. It's never stopped for us. For now, like for example, in Sudan now it's 2 years. There's other parts of the world where this is still happening and had happened for much longer. And I was faced with this question actually about a year ago about, I found it really difficult to continue just doing everyday things. It was a challenge going to university. Sometimes even leaving my bed seemed difficult, and doing everything made me feel guilty. But this same thought became a fuel for me to create. And again, this back to the fact that we are creatives and we are artists. And it's, for us, it's like breathing, like talking, like eating and drinking. It's an urge that we have to fulfill. And this feeling is what fuels us to talk about this and to fight for refugees, for asylums, for people who experience conflict. So, yeah, that what I would say paralyzed, that how I described it. This feeling made me feel paralyzed, feeling that I should not really continue doing anything. But it is the same fuel that also made me move and made me talk about this and made us all do this work and why we've been doing it all these years. Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to say something about the fact that we actually have a social practice, participatory sort of landscape now, which is within institutions, because that hasn't always existed. And we're all here as a result of like the community arts movement from the kind of 60s, 70s and 80s going forward, which are born out of the conditions that Dominic is talking about. You know, these are necessary projects because of the conditions, and therefore they coexist with the conditions because they're necessary and they need to exist. You know, and the community arts movement, it wasn't funded, it was pure art. It was born out of grassroots efforts to completely be heard.
Yeah, I'll just add as well, Mandy. And also being like in community development and also in arts, being socially trauma informed in the work that we do, being the approach that we take in what you call identifying people from conflicts who are coming, because they are their issues are very complex, and each individual has different stories to tell. So basically being very trauma informed in our approach and the way we work with people like that. So yeah, as we come again the safe space and creating that environment of positivity, it's crucial.
Thanks. And I think we had a question over here as well. I've definitely got time for at least one more, yeah?
Thank you. It's actually not a question. I just wanted to totally build on your tea towel giveaway and say that we've got some of our very lovely zines. So Gregor, who you heard from this morning, that's what we've got. So if you'd like one of those, come and find us. We can swap, yeah. So it's been a brilliant day as well. I'd just like to say that. I think it's been fascinating. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap there, but I also just want to finish on one last thought, which is there can sometimes be an uncomfortable rub. We're here today under the banner of engagement, and sometimes engagement is separate to the artwork. And we're really great, and institutions are really great at applying all sorts of different terms, from socially engaged art to outsider art. It's all art. And I believe that the work that you are all making is absolutely deserving of the same level of programming choice and main space and budget as any other artist. And so I'm sure that we're all of the same mind. I'm preaching to the converted, but I would absolutely like to see more work of this scale and ambition being made, and less distinction between outreach, engagement, and the art itself. So thank you so much, Ethar. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Tony, Jodie, Niall, and Joe. Thank you so much.